Welcome to the third episode of Zooming In with Gen Z. I'm your host, Haley Taylor Schlitz. Welcome to those that are first-timers. This is a new show that is focused on the experiences and life journeys of Generation Z members. The show is going to be fast-paced, so try to keep up. For a quick agenda check, we will start by focusing on the top news that we as Generation Z care about. Then we will talk to a member of our generation who is pretty awesome. We will wrap up with a zoom in on an individual or company that is helping out Gen Z. And lastly, a Zoom call to action on how we can support them. Thank you for joining me. Now let's get into this. 15 secrets. TikTok apparently exposed the Starbucks secret menu? According to TikTok, here are some of the top drinks you need to try. The strawberry acai refresher. According to Dexerto.com, this order has become so popular on the app that people have started calling it the TikTok drink. If you ever enjoyed slushies as a kid, you'll love this one. It's essentially a strawberry-flavored slushie. I've never had it, but it's definitely the next drink I'm getting. The triple caramel threat. Dexerto says the triple caramel threat is definitely in order for someone with a sweet tooth. Ask the barista for a cold brew with caramel syrup, vanilla sweet cold foam with dark caramel blended into the foam, and some caramel drizzle on top. I haven't had this one either, but I love caramel, so I'm really wanting to try this one now. And then the gummy bear drink. For a drink TikTokers swear tastes exactly like gummy bears, ask for a grande lemonade with raspberry syrup. Maybe I'll get this one next? I can't decide. Okay. Listen to this. Gen Z entrepreneurs. A quote from Worth. Gen Z is rapidly becoming known as the most entrepreneurial generation ever, with 62% of Gen Zers indicating that they have started or intend to start their own business. And those who have already started down this path are not only embracing entrepreneurship, but also transforming it with unique approaches to brand building, upskilling, and operations. With their oldest members being just a tender 24 years old, Gen Z is already finding widespread success with their entrepreneur exploits, from apps and YouTube channels to beauty products and handmade bow ties. Look at us! I just know we're going to be the best generation this nation and the world has ever seen. I love how hard Gen Z works to make the world a better place, despite the sometimes overwhelming amount of negative. We thank the previous generations for their work, but I am so excited to see what Gen Z will do. We have already done so much and we're barely getting started. If you have an app or business you started, share it with me so we can see your greatness. A rapping gamer. As the Vulture says, Soulja Boy's single, She Make It Clap, went viral after the rapper freestyled it on Twitch. On TikTok, at the official ant_ and at e.hoops gave it a dance challenge. Soulja Boy earned Gen Z's approval on his Twitch channel, where he added pro gamer to his skill set. Have any of you seen this dance? Can you do it? Maybe I'll have to check it out. Okay, Gen Z, it's time to meet a Gen Zer that is doing amazing world-class acts on the Strip. No, not Las Vegas. I'm talking about the fencing Strip. I'm so happy to welcome an amazing Gen Zer to the virtual stage of our third episode. Stay awake because we're about to go fast-paced with a nationally ranked fencer. My guest is 18-year-old Amelia Dungey from Texas. Hello, Amelia. Thank you for being here with us on the third episode of Zooming In with Gen Z.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, Amelia, I don't know if you heard, but earlier we were talking about Starbucks drinks. What's your favorite Starbucks drink?
I can't say that I have a definite favorite, but I've got to say the mocha frappuccino.
I love that one. I have tried that one. The other ones I was talking about, I hadn't tried any of them. But I've tried that one. I love it. Okay, getting into the good stuff of sports and school. I know people are wondering about fencing. Most people think of Star Wars or The Princess Bride when they think of fencing. I was hoping you could share with us what we should think about when we hear fencing. I know there are different types of fencing. What type do you do?
So I do saber. It's more fast paced and it's more similar to what you would like what you said earlier, kind of like Star Wars or any sort of swashbuckling. But I guess whenever I say fencing, most people think of foil or epee with the pokey, and that's kind of what they are. Is mainly just trying to hit the opponent with the tip of their blade in any given area.
Wow, awesome. That's three different types of fencing: saber, epee, and foil. And you do saber. That's pretty awesome. I'm wondering why fencing in the first place? Like, how did you get introduced to fencing and what made you choose fencing over other sports?
So I actually love telling this story, not because like some long journey of me finding who I am destined to be, but more of I was in fourth grade and my mom told me I needed to pick something to do over the summer, and we found a long list of sports, and we both didn't know what fencing was, so we were like, might as well see what it's all about, and here I am today.
That is so cute. I love that. So what's your favorite thing about fencing? Like, you had no idea what it was in the beginning, but after doing it for so long, what's become your favorite thing about it?
I think my personal favorite is the strategy behind fencing. A lot of it is really strategic, and I think that's something that people don't really consider whenever they look at sports. They look at the actions, and I just really, really enjoy planning or trying to find what the best action is to do at any given like moment.
I love that. I love that. Like a football play. Like, it's something that you plan and think about. I love it. I think, like you said, a lot of people don't, they just see sports as like the physical, but rather than like thinking and planning. I love it. I love that. So when did you know that you were particularly passionate about fencing and it wasn't just an extracurricular, like in your free time, but rather like you wanted to compete and do it competitively?
I'd say entering my fifth grade. So, so it started when I was kind of young. Entering my fifth grade, I definitely, since it was a new sport to me, I definitely took it seriously. So mentally, I've always had that kind of disposition when I was like thinking about fencing. And I think my love for it just continues to grow ever since that moment where I was like, this is what I really want to do.
That is so cool. I love that. That's really inspiring, honestly, to think that you could be exposed to a whole new sport or a whole new opportunity you never heard about in your entire life, and then it becomes like passion. I love it. So did your high school have a fencing team, or did you do it at some like external club?
So my high school does not have fencing, and I think this is where my own personal love for fencing really came in. And I had to make the time to kind of decide which club I wanted to go to learn fencing. And I think that journey of going to different clubs and learning from many different people is what helped me because this was really something I had to do on my own. There wasn't like a lot of people who were like there to kind of guide you by being attached to a school. It was mainly like, here's something that you really love. Here's a whole bunch of different options, and you get to choose what's for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So you mentioned that you had to really think about your love for fencing and what club you wanted to go to and really like sit and think about that. Was it difficult to do that, to dedicate that time, figure out what club, go to the club, be a fencer and be a student? Was it difficult to do both at the same time?
There were moments, of course, with anybody who really loves something and having to balance it with other responsibilities. But I found that a lot of the aspects between fencing and school kind of went hand in hand. And I'd like to say I was really lucky on being able to pick a sport that was not only something that was uncommon, but was so flexible around me going to school.
Yeah.
So, about like I would take my schoolwork with me, going to tournaments, and my school was really understanding of me having to go to tournaments or have these obligations. So it was, like I said, really dependent on the person because they had to find their groove.
Yeah.
And if they were really dedicated, then it would be like something that they could like find and discover on their own, which I think is like really important and also really good for people.
Yeah. Absolutely. Flexibility is so important when you're a student trying to juggle so many different things. So you mentioned that it had its moments. I'm wondering, what is like the biggest barrier you faced while you were trying to fence and be a student? Like, was it like a constant reoccurring barrier, or was it one thing, one time, one moment where you were like, this is too difficult?
I would say that balance that I mentioned earlier. Some people think, oh yeah, once I get my balance, I get my balance. But like everything in life, you get random obstacles when you least expect it. And so you have to rebalance like
Yeah.
how you're doing things. And I think that flexibility was not only like trying to figure out what like how best to carry everything, but also when it was time to switch things over or focus on over the other. Of course, I've always focused on my academics more and they took priority, but I think fencing has really helped me with time management. And if anything is like a really big obstacle that might have been reoccurring, which was time management.
I love it. I love it. And I think that's something that's really important, time management, that you learn throughout school, especially as students do other things, music, sports. It's really a life lesson. So I think that's really good. So switching up a little bit, how's the diversity in the sport? Like fencing, like you had said, when you and your mom were looking for, when you first saw it, you had no idea what it was. And I think a lot of people don't really know what fencing is, or maybe they've just heard of it, like I said, on Star Wars or other movies. So how's the diversity in the sport?
I would like to say that fencing is one of the most diverse sports I have ever gotten the opportunity to participate in. Fencing is one of the sports which transcends borders. It is a worldwide sport, and so many people from so many different backgrounds have participated in it and have been their own trailblazers. And I think that that's really inspiring to a lot of kids who may not know what fencing is to see someone and be like, oh, wow, that person did it. They were able to like do something that they loved in this sport.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So you think the fencing is like pretty inclusive then, like a lot it's very welcoming, a welcoming environment because of its diversity?
Yes, for sure.
Perfect.
Um, there are, like I said, so many different types of people, and I think that really encourages everyone to be more inclusive, more understanding. And I think that's something that's like really, really important, not only for just the fencers, but for the community as a whole.
Absolutely. That is so motivating. So any of our viewers, if you're considering fencing, know that you will not be excluded. You'll feel very welcomed in that space. So it's really good. So you're going on a fencing scholarship to Northwestern University, right?
Yes, I am.
Oh, congratulations. That's incredible. So were there other schools you were considering, or was it just Northwestern? And then why did you end up choosing Northwestern?
So I definitely had considered other schools. For example, before I even had an inkling of understanding what Northwestern was all about, my priorities were on Princeton. Princeton was my end all be all. I was so convinced that that was the school I was going to go to. But like earlier, fencing has like a whole bunch of different opportunities, and so Northwestern was definitely one of those things where it kind of opened new doors, and I had no idea what it was about. And once I learned more about it, I realized, wow, this is the school for me. This has everything that I could have ever wanted, both academically and athletics wise. And I think that's what really made it like important and also like my number one. And yeah, that I mean, it's just that
Absolutely.
click that you have with school that is really, really important. And I'm so lucky that I was able to find it with Northwestern.
Absolutely. I love that. I love what you said about opening doors. Like when life gives you doors of opportunities to open it and make sure that you keep your mind open so that you see those doors and can open them. I love it. I love that. So, speaking of opening doors, are you thinking Los Angeles Olympics 2028?
So I haven't entirely kind of wiped that from my plate. I have big plans for the future. I want to go down the medical lane. out. And so I am definitely keeping my eyes open for 2028 Olympics. It's definitely not off the table, but for now, my focuses are on school.
Absolutely. So you mentioned medical field. Why medicine? And are you planning on tying that in with fencing, like a doctor who would be on the field of a football field to be there and take care of any injured players? Or are you thinking unrelated to fencing?
So it is. I'll start with why I chose medicine. I've always had kind of an affinity for medicine. I've always really enjoyed it. And one of the interesting things about fencing is that I was kind of prone to sports injuries. Not that everybody is, it was just a personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to learn more about my body and then like bodily mechanics, and that just helped me grow my love for it. And fencing has definitely been a great contributor to why I was interested in medicine in the first place. That diversity and that inclusion that we spoke on before is something that in medicine I don't quite see as much. And I would definitely like to apply my background of being in such a diverse area and field and try to kind of put that in my love for medicine and learn more about it. It kind of like there's different aspects of both that I feel go hand in hand, and kind of want to build that bridge.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is so inspiring. I think that other little girls and boys will look up to you and see that sports doesn't have to be separate from science or math. I think that's a lot of the times a preconceived notion that you're an athlete or you're like a nerd, like these kind of like separate subgroups, but you totally destroy that. And I love it. So as our closing question, what advice would you give to other girls and boys out there who want to competitively fence while in middle school or high school?
I would say if you want to do it on your own to give yourself an idea, there are tons of videos out there for you to find, tons of really interesting stories and people out there who have participated in fencing. And if you feel like you really want to, get your hands dirty, then I highly recommend that you find a club or some sort of online class for you to practice fencing, and then you'll find, oh, maybe this is the sport for me. And if you realize this isn't the sport for you, then I'm just glad that you could learn more about this sport and have like a
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. What a fantastic way to wrap up this conversation. Thank you so much, Amelia, for taking time to join me today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Yes, you definitely made this episode lucky number 3. You are so inspiring, and we can't wait to watch you take on your future with your weapon drawn. Hopefully we can have you back here again when you advance into your next amazing accomplishments. Okay, awesome. That was so fun. Okay, like I said in our agenda from earlier, we will end our show with a segment called Zooming In. This section will highlight people or companies around the nation who are doing amazing things to help and support Gen Z. Okay, hear this headline. Gen Z propelled a surge in young adult turnout. A quote from Brookings Institute. Even more remarkable is the rise in turnout of the youngest group, those aged 18 to 24, who are now mostly members of Gen Z. This group was especially notable in 2020 as they comprised a large part of the summer's political and racial justice protests. But did we take these protests to the polls? Listen to this. These young adult voters cast ballots at higher rates in 2020 than in any election so far this century. With turnout at more than half for Gen Z Asian Americans and white voters, nearly half for Gen Z Black voters, and more than 2/5 for Gen Z Latino or Hispanic voters. The impact of this voting bloc, which leaned heavily Democrat in the most recent election, was influential to many close 2020 swing states. Don't let anybody ever tell you that your voice doesn't matter or that your vote doesn't impact results. Your vote is so important, fought for, and deserves to be recognized. Thank you to Brookings Institute for publishing this so Gen Z can see just how impactful and powerful we are and encourage us to keep going because we are literally only getting started. That turnout wasn't even all of us. We are still coming of age. Also, kudos to Gen Z for their protest to the polls. Now, I have a Zoom call to action for you guys. Register to vote. Your vote is your voice on election day. We say we want change. Well, that will never happen if we don't vote, if you don't speak up and speak out. So please register to vote and get out to vote in all elections. If you need to register to vote, you can visit vote.org. Even if you can't, encourage those around you to register to vote and vote. Whether it be your friends, your family, or your followers, spread the word about the importance of voting. Remind them that their voice is important, impactful, and not only needs but deserves to be heard just as much as anyone else's. Also, check out that Brookings Institute article. Well, thank you guys. That's it for episode 3 of Zooming In with Gen Z. That rhymed. Thanks so much for watching. Join us in 2 weeks for episode 4, where we will talk about interesting news with interesting people. Special thanks to Citizen Ed for providing us with this platform to talk about the issues we care about. See you in 2 weeks. All right, how do I zoom out on this thing?